Welcome back. My name is McKibben. I'm the director of the Salinas History Project, and I'm your host for YourTown today. My guests are Megan Hunter, who is the Director of Community Development in Salinas, Cary Siegfried, who is the Director of Libraries and Community Services. I have to read this every time. And Kirstan Lundquist, who is the Recreation and Community Services Superintendent. And we were talking about policy meeting practice. Reality today versus reality 50 or 60 years ago when Salinas entered the modern age, or 100 years ago when Salinas was first invented, and how what we did in the past affected the way Salinas is now, and what we're trying to do to fix some of the problems that were the consequence of sometimes bad policy decision. And on the break, we were chatting a little bit about the helter-skelter approach to city building, especially in modern times, that has resulted in lots of unintended consequences that are not so good. So what we would like to begin with now is to talk a little bit about planning. It's not an accident that we call this the LSL Vibrancy Plan, and not the LSL Vibrancy event that everybody can just participate in. So when you talk about grassroots efforts, what you're talking about is the beginning of a conversation. And then we end up with a decision that carefully puts in place a structure that everyone kind of agrees on, hopefully with not too many negative unintended consequences. So Cary Ann, would you like to take that and tell us a little bit about how that works for you in Salinas, what you've done with that?
Well, sure. We're looking at kind of addressing citywide more of the infrastructure needs in libraries, recreation center, and parks planning. And so while the LSL Vibrancy Study addresses a specific part of Salinas, we're looking really citywide, not just because there is a lot of need in the LSL. So of course we'll be focusing a lot of efforts there, but there is a need throughout Salinas for additional parks, additional recreation services, additional library services. So we could probably put a new library in a certain location, or start a different service, or expand a recreation center, or expand a park, or put a new park down somewhere, and it would be great. You know, it would solve a real need somewhere, because there is so much need throughout Salinas for those types of services. But it's really important to look at the city as a whole, and to be able to do this in a real intelligent and hopefully intentional way. This is not a short-term effort. It's very much a long-term effort. So we've started that master plan process for libraries and recreation services and parks. And so we're really trying to get input from the community on what's needed in particular areas. And people have great ideas, and you know, we've already learned so much about the community in starting that process. But this is going to be a long-term plan. This is probably going to be a 10-year plan where we are going to be prioritizing what's needed and where it's needed, and trying to figure out where to get the funding to be able to follow through with that process. But I think it's important. It's kind of a contract with the community too, because we're working with community members to put this process together, and we want them to hold us to this. You know, we're going to put that, we're going to put that plan out there. And to me, it's a contract with the community that this is what you said you wanted, and this is what we're going to try to do.
And what you're saying then is that you're looking at the city holistically, which is in absolute contrast to the way city builders looked at cities at the turn of the last century, when Salinas was really built. In that time and place, they did not conceptualize the city holistically. They looked at parts of the city. Some were deemed worthy for development and investment, and some were not worthy. So what you're doing is really pretty, I'm not going to use the word radical, but I would use the word forward thinking, because what it does is invite people to think about Salinas differently. Instead of thinking about where they live, and of course their neighborhood needs another park, and of course they need a library there where they could walk. Does that work for everybody? And what can be done to integrate people, to cross racial and ethnic and class lines? So instead of looking at the Alisal in isolation, what you're saying is that what you want to do is not just talk to the Alisal, but have people in the Alisal talk to people on the north side or the south side. I'm really bad at directions, so I hope we're on the right sides. But there are lots of sides, and we want everyone in conversation, and we want people who are of different classes to be able to see themselves all as residents of the city. And how does the city as a whole benefit from new policies that are moving in a new direction? So when we think about the new direction that Salinas is moving in, what is your understanding of that direction? Where do you think the city seems to be going towards? A holistic vision, more parks and libraries. Thoughts?
Well, I think the key that frames all of these planning efforts, and we have actually multiple planning efforts in addition to the library and parks master plan and the Alisal vibrancy plan. But I think the foundation is community engagement and really working with folks to really help define what those goals and objectives are. And I think, bringing the information together, allowing folks to understand what the challenges are in the Alisal and what the resources are there, but also looking, as Cary Ann said, holistically so that we can make decisions that benefit various areas in Salinas.
So are you initiating forums for people to come and talk? And what are the most surprising things that you're finding out at these forums? What did you think that people wanted from the city, and what are you finding out that they actually want?
I've been most surprised. Public safety is obviously a concern, but it's actually not come up as the most pressing. It's been housing, and it's been recreational and other programs for families. That's really what has come up. So that surprised me.
Because you expected, because of the media headlines, that it was all going to be
more
about
police.
Public safety. Public safety.
But no.
But people feel safe, and I feel safe in Salinas. Kirstan, what is your most surprising understanding when you talk to just residents? Would you agree with Megan, or have you heard new things like what do people seem to want the city to have more of or less of?
They're wanting safe spaces, opportunities for their kids.
Opportunities.
We have a number of seniors that are looking for additional programming. The city reduced most of its adult programming and recreation about 10 years ago, and so we're hearing now from residents that they also want to have programs for adults. So more family and educational opportunities.
That's a really good point. That it is, we always emphasize diversity. Salinas is a diverse place. I really would like to emphasize common ground, common denominators. But in fact, it is diverse, and you're speaking to a lot of different needs, a lot of different populations, and when they speak to one another, that's the important bridge that must be crossed.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges that I think we face both in looking at recreation space and library space and meeting spaces. There's really a lack of place for people to come together. And there's so many different groups that want to be able to meet, start a new program that can bring neighbors together, that can bring art groups together, or music groups together, mentoring for youth, that kind of thing. But there's a real lack of that public space.
But you touched on a possibility, because people come together over music. People come together over the rodeo or rodeo, whatever. People come together over all kinds of interesting things, and it doesn't necessarily mean that one group needs to represent all. But it would be important for everybody to engage with one another. And that's a place, Kirstan, that you can be, you know, I think over sports, heavens, we all engage over that, especially when it comes to our children. There's a lot of focus on children in Salinas. It's a child-friendly place. It is a place where people, I always notice people with baby strollers. I'm attracted to babies, but anyway, that there are lots of children in Salinas. And so it's not a problem to be addressed necessarily, but there's a lot to be done for them. What is the library doing in terms of children's services? What kinds of things what kinds of programs do you provide for families?
Well, one of our real big focuses these days, and I think not just the library, but there are many other organizations in the community that are addressing this, is really early childhood literacy. I mean, so many studies will show you that, you know, if you've got $1 million to invest, it'll go a lot further if you invested in early childhood education than if you invested in high school kids trying to get them to do better in school. So those programs that you have that deal with early literacy are a great investment in just about any community. And I think in so many different cultures, there may be parents who are taught that they don't really have much to do with education, that they're not a teacher, they send their kids to school, and those are the teachers, those are the experts in education. And they don't necessarily understand that part, that from the day that child is born, that as a parent, you are a teacher, you're your child's first teacher, and in so many cases the best yeah, the best teacher. So being able to hold those programs, whether it's a story time or whether it's a play group or whether it's just kind of an open space for parents to be able to engage with their kids, libraries are offering that opportunity for young families.
Do you do parenting classes?
Not necessarily what you would necessarily call, let's learn about parenting, but we work with First Five and offer play groups that are really, in many cases, more focused on the parent than they are on the child. So they're an opportunity for that parent or to just the caregiver and the child to come together and really focus on the fact that, you don't just need to put your child on the floor and let him play with blocks or cars or whatever, but get down there on the floor with the child and let's learn about these blocks together. Let's learn about cars. Let's learn about putting Legos together, that kind of thing, and just emphasizing to the parent that this is a huge thing for that child.
Thing.
You may think he's playing, but he's actually learning from you at the same time that he's playing.
Well, when we look at there's so much media attention given to problems like crime, and we know that children learn from their parents. We know that modeling is everything. So this small initiative, providing a safe space for children and parents to be and learn how to interact with one another in a positive way that inspires not just children's literacy, but parents' literacy as well.
Exactly.
When you read to your children, you'd better know how to read.
Right.
So that's true too. That's a very tiny thing, but it leads to a safer, more stable society. And that's what you're all about. That's what you're all doing. You're not police officers. We don't necessarily need to address these problems by putting more officers out there, although that's always nice. But by programs like this, we think it's a small thing, and it's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's an investment in the future. It really
absolutely is. So children's literacy, adult literacy. and cultural literacy. Getting into the mainstream is what you're really talking about. Learning, and when you say literacy, you're really talking about English literacy. Learning the English language fluently, and being able to pass that initiative on to your children. And in terms of the recreation centers, what kinds of programs are you putting in place there?
Well, we also offer early literacy programs. We have 2 Tiny Tot classes that are recreation play schools where they're learning the foundation.
Tiny Tot is so cute.
And preparing them for kindergarten. And so those are, I think a lot of times people don't know that recreation also offers educational type programs as well. We offer regular after-school programs at all of our recreation centers. And then a lot of them, as Carrie Ann mentioned, are used by a number of organizations in the community for classes, for meeting space. Really are that neighborhood hub.
So they contact you if they want to put together a knitting group, which I would want to do, a book group, a bridge club, any kind of cooking class. That's where they would go. They would go to your office.
Correct.
Okay.
And so in addition to those types of programs, we also offer youth sports. And you mentioned youth sports. So we have about 14 programs that happen annually, whether they're leagues, camps, and clinics. Really focused on, building some life skills, teaching them, confidence, conflict management, how to be a team player, and then the skill development, certainly, which is important for the future as well.
Absolutely. You're not trying to really create professional ball players here, but these are team sports, an opportunity as a respite if you live in an apartment to get outside and play and to learn from one another. And it's also skill building and networking. These are all important things that bring people together across racial and class lines. They're positive things, and they go well beyond enforcement issues. And I think that it's often overlooked when we look at cities and we think of cities with problems or with populations at risk, the incremental initiatives that can be put in place in a carefully thought out way to make change going forward. But you have to have that vision first.
Exactly. You have
You
to have the plan.
know where you're going. You have to have a plan. And on that cheery note, we're going to take another little break. And when we come back, I'd like to end with our last segment talking a little bit about what you would like to see happen in the next few years in Salinas, how you see yourselves contributing to the growth of the city, because I think we all have something to offer. And pride of place in this place is really, really critical. I think that's one of the things that Salinas has felt a little bit diminished by, that the headlines are not always so positive, even though you're describing some really, really positive initiatives that are happening here. So my name is Carol McKibbon again. I'm the director of the Salinas History Project, and we're going to take a short break and return and finish our conversation about the real power in Salinas. These three ladies.